counter. Wear protective gloves and strong-soled shoes or boots. Avoid sand.
Good morning. Welcome to Economic Development and Equity Subcommittee. Today is Wednesday, February 22nd, 2023. It is 10 a.m. and we will begin. Item number one, do we have any call to the order? Call the meeting to order, obviously, and then call to the public. I have some names, but they're for agenda items specific. Okay. Minutes of the meetings. I have Walter Ringfield Jr. on the line for the, is this specifically for the minutes?
Chairwoman, we did have residents sign up for item 1, which is the minutes, but they are not online.
Okay. So I will put it on record that I asked Walter Ringfield Jr. to speak on item number 1, and he is not on the phone. So can I have a motion for the minutes?
Approve. Second.
I got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those that are not in favor, please say no. Motion carries. Information only are items 2 through 3. Do we have any questions about information only? No? Okay. We'll go to information and discussion, items 4 through 5. Item number 4. I have one question. Should I go to the public or should the presentation be presented?
Madam Chair, it's at your discretion.
Okay.
I don't believe we have the callers online just yet.
All right.
They are online? All 3 are online, so it's at
Okay.
your discretion.
Why don't we do the presentation and then?
Right. Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee, for item number 4, it's an affordable housing update. With us, we have Deputy City Manager Gina Montes. We have Titus Matthew, our Housing Director, and Samantha Keating, who's our Deputy Housing Director. And with that, I'll turn it over to Gina.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee. This morning, we have a review of the tools for affordable housing and investments that we've made over the years, and also kind of our efforts to increase the number of affordable housing opportunities to the community. We'll also provide an update on the Housing Phoenix plan and where we are on some of those key items. And with that, I'll turn it over to Housing Director Titus Matthew.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee. Pleasure to be here this morning to give you an update from the Housing Department. The Housing Department is a public housing authority, or PHA, for the City of Phoenix, and this was created on April 5th, 1939. As the city's PHA, we operate just over 1,200 public housing units. Our public housing serves both seniors and families in apartment communities, as well as scattered single-family residences. Apartments range in size from 1 to 5 bedrooms. We're also responsible for administering the 7,300 housing choice vouchers that the city is allocated by the federal government. The Housing Choice Voucher Program serves as the federal government's major program for assisting very low-income families afford decent and safe housing in the private market. In addition to our public housing units, we provide more than 3,500 units with more than 300 under construction in apartment communities throughout the city. These communities include developments funded through federal programs like our own Choice Neighborhood Project in Edison Eastlake community, in addition to a portfolio of affordable housing properties.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yes.
I don't know if anybody else has any questions. Specifically about affordable properties, it says 300 units under construction. With what dollars?
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, most of these units are under construction with home funds, the home dollars that were mentioned in this presentation, the federal government dollars.
They're federal government dollars that help build or help us construct affordable properties?
Yes.
Okay. The reason why I'm asking that is because there is a bill, I believe it's SB 1117, and what is being stated or what is being told to the community or to the body is that this would help build affordable housing. And so my question back to staff is, would that, in the sense, help build with affordable housing if they're not being used by any federal dollars? How do we, as a city, and I don't think we have the authority, but as the city, make sure that these properties are building or offer some affordability or workforce? Do we have that ability?
Go ahead.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, I believe you're referring to the changes in the that would preempt our ability to regulate in terms of zoning. Is that the particular bill you're discussing?
Correct.
The part of the issue with that legislation is that nowhere does it set aside or give us any ability to designate. It doesn't prioritize affordable units. I'll put it that way. It's for general housing, and so while that'll impact the inventory citywide or maybe perhaps statewide, possibly, I don't have the data to support that necessarily, but it does not prioritize affordable. So we don't have any reason to say that that, in fact, is going to increase our affordable units. And historically, these affordable units, they're not built with some sort of subsidy. So we use the biggest tool for us is a low-income housing tax credit program and our home dollars that we use to supplement that and to provide gap financing. But the way to get the rents affordable is to provide some kind of subsidy, either for the construction of that, because it is expensive. Construction is expensive, and also for the rents. So that's where the vouchers come in. So those are the main tools that we have, and unless we have an ability to subsidize more units that are in fact affordable, these bills won't necessarily impact that. So, and did you have anything to add?
Thank you. Councilwoman Stark also. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I think Gina summed it up accurately as well, so I have no other further comments.
Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties. My understanding of Senate Bill 1117 is it really doesn't directly address the issue by giving people by right zoning. It doesn't force them then to build affordable housing, correct?
Chairwoman, Councilwoman Stark, that is correct. There's no direct impact on affordable housing. It does not require it. It does not allow us to have inclusionary zoning or some other tools that are available in other states to encourage affordable housing units to be constructed.
And I think it now exempts cities under the population of 25,000. So that includes cities like Paradise Valley and Oro Valley, and so I'm not sure we're really attacking the issue with that bill. Thank you.
My last question is, how do you qualify for affordable home or to do affordable housing? What is the benchmark?
So primarily the affordable housing is defined for housing for populations earning less than 80% of area median income. So generally we look at 30% is public housing and 30 and above to 80% is more affordable housing and low-income housing. That's the federal government definition.
And workforce?
Workforce is generally 80% to 120.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To support affordable housing investment in the community, the Housing Department utilizes U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, Home Investment Partnership Funds to assist in the development of rental units in addition to down payment assistance. Through our gap financing program, the department serves as a lender to affordable housing developers by providing development gap funding. This program has provided a significant impact on the community. Since 1993, the Home Loan Fund program alone has supported over 7,700 housing units in 125 projects. In total, over $100 million in funding has been provided to affordable housing developers as an additional funding source to aid in the creation or preservation of affordable housing units within the city of Phoenix. The Open Doors Down Payment Assistance Program is designed to assist eligible first-time home buyers with the purchase of a home within the city of Phoenix. Also funded through the Home Dollars, these home ownership assistance funds are offered as a deferred payment 0% interest loan that is forgiven after a period of 5 to 15 years, dependent on the amount of assistance provided. Throughout the last several years, over 90 families have been able to utilize this program. Currently, $1.5 million in funding is available to assist additional families. At this time, I will turn over the presentation to Deputy Housing Director Samantha Keating to provide an update on the Housing Phoenix Plan and review our upcoming affordable housing efforts. Samantha?
Thank you, Titus. The Housing Phoenix Plan was approved in June of 2020 by the Mayor and City Council with a vision to create a stronger and more vibrant Phoenix through increased housing options for residents at all income levels and family sizes. To achieve this vision, the plan set out a goal of creating or preserving 50,000 housing units by 2030 through the implementation of the 9 policy initiatives you see on the screen. We've made significant progress on both the 50,000 unit goal as well as the 9 policy initiatives. To date, over 26,000 housing units have been created or preserved through the city, which is more than 50% of our goal. Of this total, about 15% are considered affordable units, serving those with incomes at or below 80% of the area median income. The majority, or about 69%, would be considered market rate development, that which units serve those with incomes above 120% of the area median income. The next series of slides will run through the key progress on the plan's initiatives. Initiative 2 of the plan is designed to look at zoning ordinance changes that will make it easier and more cost-efficient to build or preserve different types of housing. The Planning and Development Department led the Walkable Urban Code Expansion Text Amendment, which was approved by the Mayor and City Council in February of 2020. In addition, last month, 3 additional text amendments were initiated by Planning Commission that will explore ordinance changes designed to expand options for mobile home developments. Also, in collaboration with the Planning and Development Department, specific development review teams have been identified to review affordable housing development projects so that the team members are able to understand the unique requirements of affordable housing projects. The identification of the development team falls under Initiative 5 regarding building innovations and cost-saving practices. The third initiative in the plan is to develop city-owned land with affordable and mixed-income housing. After approval of the plan, a list of properties suitable for residential development was compiled. An update to the list was approved by Council in August of last year. In December, a request for proposals was released for a co-development opportunity for senior housing at the Helen Drake Senior Center, located along 27th Avenue north of Glendale Avenue. This solicitation closed this past Friday. Staff is currently working with several partner departments and council offices for additional RFP releases in their districts. Several initiatives have also been advanced through partnership with the Neighborhood Services Department. In line with Initiative 5, a pilot offsite infrastructure program was developed and launched in June of last year. This program provides a funding opportunity for affordable housing development projects that have encountered unanticipated offsite requirements. Consistent with Initiative 7 to expand our preservation efforts, an expanded rental rehabilitation program was approved in March of 2021. This program provides rehabilitation funds to rental property owners in exchange for an agreement to keep the units affordable. There's been good interest in the program, and several projects are currently underway. Additionally, in June of 2021, a key downtown property was acquired along 5th Avenue north of Van Buren Street. This property is adjacent to an existing housing department community and was added to the Housing Phoenix Plan property list for future redevelopment. Also, in an effort to preserve our existing affordable housing stock in line with Initiative 7 of the plan, the Landlord Incentive Program was launched in 2020. This program was designed to incentivize private market landlords to accept the housing vouchers that the city administers for their rental units. Thanks to the mayor and council's support, this program has been funded with $5.5 million in CARES Act and ARPA funding, and now offers landlords a one-time $2,000 payment for each new rental contract. To date, the program has facilitated over 2,000 payments to over 1,000 landlords, with more than 300 new landlords participating in the Housing Choice Voucher Program. To further support the Housing Choice Voucher Program, last month the department adopted payment standards at 120% of HUD's 2023 fair market rents. Compared to 2022 payment standards, this represents over a 50% increase. The update in payment standards will significantly increase the amount of housing assistance that can be paid on behalf of a participant and helps to increase the pool of units that voucher holders can qualify for. To help implement the Housing Phoenix Plan, the Housing Department established the Affordable Housing Division in 2021. Division staff serve as affordable housing advocates to help developers navigate the development process in line with Initiative 5 to assist with building and cost-saving practices. The Affordable Housing Division also meets regularly with the Planning and Development Department to discuss affordable housing developments that are currently in the entitlement process. Finally, in line with Initiative 9 of the plan, the Affordable Housing Division regularly communicates the city's housing needs and updates on the plan to a variety of stakeholders. In 2022, division staff provided presentations to the city's Homelessness Task Force and Planning Commission, in addition to serving on panels at the Arizona Department of Housing's Housing Forum, as well as the Greater Phoenix Economic Council. Looking forward, we have several additional funding programs that will help create or preserve additional affordable housing in the community. The first is the Affordable Housing Gap Financing Program. This program will provide $6 million to developers to aid in affordable housing development projects. The call for interest for this program was issued earlier this month. The Community Land Trust Program will provide $5 million to create permanently affordable homeownership opportunities in the city. The RFP for the program administrator was also released earlier this month. The city was also provided an allocation of $21.3 million in home art funding. After extensive community outreach, HUD recently approved our proposed allocation plan to help support funding for those experiencing or at risk of homelessness. There are also several efforts related to the Housing Phoenix Plan implementation that we're planning to undertake in the coming months. Several of these efforts will be in collaboration with the Planning and Development Department. In line with Initiative 2 to look at amendments to the zoning ordinance, we anticipate Planning Commission to initiate text amendments to address affordable housing incentives and an expansion of housing options next month. Accessory dwelling units and the expansion of the single-family attached development option will be proposed through the housing option text amendment.
Can I ask a question on that? I think it's 12, or slide 12 or the, oh, there it is. ADUs. Could you please explain what ADUs are? Because part of SB 1117 is some people are supporting it because of the ADUs and wanting expansion of it, in particular the city of Phoenix. So could you explain what ADUs are, and I don't know if Josh, if you come up here, and why there's a big push and importance to it?
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, and for the public, we do have Joshua Benaric, who's our new Planning and Development Director, coming to the table as well.
And Madam Chair, while Josh is coming up, accessory dwelling units are viewed as an option to increase the number of housing units available, where you could have a smaller unit, say in the backyard of a single-family home, and to provide either an option for a family member or possibly a rental unit. And I'll now that Josh is up, I'll let him describe further.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, Jeannie gave a great summary of an overview of what an ADU is. Generally speaking, it's a structure that is positioned on a lot that is smaller than the primary structure that can be used for sleeping and cooking facilities. Right now, the City of Phoenix does allow an accessory structure to be housed on a lot. The main provision that isn't currently permitted in code is the provision of cooking facilities, and that's what we would be looking to update as part of this text amendment.
Okay, thank you. So I know that the City of Tucson has adopted an ordinance for ADUs, and it hasn't appeared to be problematic. What is our timetable exactly? Where are we? I see it's been initiated, but what's the process going to be, and how long is it going to take?
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, Councilwoman Stark, we are looking to initiate next Thursday with the Planning Commission. At that point, we'll be going to the village planning committees this spring to give them an overview of options. As you mentioned, the City of Tucson and other municipalities have adopted ADU regulations. We're certainly the largest municipality in the state, right? And we'll have to consider whether or not a one-size-fits-all approach makes sense, or if there might be some geographic parameters to put in place. And that's the conversation. We would anticipate having some draft language later this spring, starting a hearing process as we move into the summer. We certainly want to provide an opportunity to engage with all the stakeholders. Our village planning committees use the council to identify which strategy makes the most sense for Phoenix.
And I appreciate that. And I agree with the one size doesn't necessarily fit all, but I think it is a tool that we need. I remember when I was planning director, there were a lot of stories, especially parents wanting to tend to a child that had special needs, but they wanted them close, but they wanted them to have independent living, talking to children who now were having to take care of their elderly parents. So they're not necessarily always rental units, but there is a purpose for them. And so I hope we have a healthy dialogue and that we can get something on the books. And again, from what I can tell, I went to a presentation about a year ago on what Tucson did, and it just hasn't really been a problem, and that's the second largest city in the state of Arizona. So thank you.
Councilwoman O'Brien.
Thank you. Josh, can you remind me, it's been a while since I served on my village planning committee, but didn't we do some work on this matter previously?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman O'Brien, and thank you for the opportunity to clarify. Yes, the City of Phoenix has done recently 2 amendments to the zoning ordinance to allow for what we call interior suites with cooking facilities, which essentially is an ADU but under the same roof. So I think the most popular version of that is the Lennar Next Gen home. So that is permitted in most of 10 out of the 15 villages, generally the north and south villages in Phoenix today. And those are some recent updates that the Mayor and Council approved within the last 2 years.
Thank you.
So thank you. I'm going to give an example of, and it seems like District 4 has these examples, which is great. In the ADUs, I know it's a detached, but in several parts of the neighborhoods that I represent, they also put like a detached tiny home. Would that be considered an ADU?
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, yes.
Okay.
I think that the terms would be interchangeable. It would still be, by ordinance, considered an accessory structure to the primary structure on the lot.
Okay. So like a tiny home, even, what are they called? The Airstreams that they have in a particular neighborhood of mine that started all that, where they were putting Airstreams, but they were renting it as Airbnbs and as a VRBO. And I think that's where some of the dynamics happened because of our ADU ruling. And so I'm just curious, will that lift everything? And will it be affordable, or will it cause another another Airbnb, VRBO situation, which is happening right now in many of our neighborhoods?
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, it's a great question. Having some type of affordability condition associated with ADUs is not something we've currently contemplated, nor is it something that I think the city of Tucson is contemplating. That's not to say that that's not something we could certainly consider. I think that's the beauty of our process, right? We have an opportunity to continue to collaborate with stakeholders, our neighbors, the village planning committees, to understand if there is a solution out there that maybe could make some sense for us. And so it's not something that we currently have programmed as a potential condition, but something we can take a look at.
Councilwoman O'Brien.
Thank you. And I just want to hit on that part again about, you talked about not a one-size-fits-all, where previously, was it 10 out of 15 of our villages have the ability to have the multi-generational homes, which is why it is so important in Phoenix that we go out and get that stakeholder input, because not every neighborhood is exactly the same, whereas this particular legislation would be blanket legislation, and neighbors and communities would no longer have any kind of input on what might come to be their neighbors, correct?
Mayor, Councilwoman O'Brien, your assessment is correct. And again, I'll continue to point to the amount of pride we have in our process, the great things that come out of collaborating with stakeholders and residents through the village planning committees. And so we're excited to get started on that conversation with the community as we initiate not only this is a text amendment, but other text amendments that Ms. Keating brought up next week.
And this has been in the works for some time. We didn't just decide to do this, correct?
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, correct. We've been having some level of conversation with the community about this ever since the Housing Phoenix Plan came about. The Housing Phoenix Plan contemplates us having this conversation. Certainly there's been a lot on deck for us as a city, as for all cities in the last 2 years. We're excited to be in a better position to tackle that conversation in a meaningful way with the Village Planning Committee starting next week.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Councilwoman Ansari.
Thank you. While we're on the topic, I guess my thoughts on the Senate bill, and I completely understand it's a very flawed bill, very problematic for cities. I do think there are a lot of elements in there that are very strong, and I think the reason it's coming about is because, while we have a lot of great goals in this plan and we have been doing quite a bit, I do think we're not necessarily working with the urgency that the housing crisis requires. I know we're halfway to our goal of units created or preserved, but however, the majority of those are not affordable units either, or workforce units. Majority are market rate. Fully believe in and buy into the idea that we just need more housing stock in general, but I think we need to be prioritizing the affordable piece. So I guess when it comes to the elements that I like of the bill, the ADUs, creating new zoning districts for duplexes and triplexes, increasing density and height allowances within 2 miles of light rail, also removing parking minimums. Can you talk a little bit about what Phoenix is doing beyond? I'm really glad to hear that the ADU process is really starting in good faith next month. What other policies are we looking at in line with some of those good elements from the bill to make sure that Phoenix really does lead and operates with the urgency that this crisis requires?
Absolutely. Madam Chair, Councilwoman Ansari, as I've spoken about recently, I'm really proud of the work that the City of Phoenix has done in our light rail corridors. If you look specifically at the work that you helped lead along with Council District 8 for South Phoenix, part of programming intensity and density along the light rail needs to be done in collaboration with the community. And I think the first critical step in that effort is to do a plan with the community to talk about where that intensity and density makes the most sense. And we have a plan in place for South Central to do just that. So I think that's a key part that's maybe missed in this legislation that I would say is really critical. But before you go and deploy and rezone property, you should be thoughtful about where that should occur, right? And so I think Phoenix is exceptionally positioned to have that conversation with the community about where does that rezoning need to take place. Part of what we want to do is have a zoning district available for us that really puts an emphasis on things like walkability and mixed use. The Walkable Urban Code does just that. And thanks to your leadership, you approved the expansion of the Walkable Urban Code along all of our light rail corridors last year. That's why we put it in the Housing Phoenix plan. And so now the next step is to have some conversations about where property is zoned, where we own property along light rail corridors, where we have property positioned for rezoning on the light rail corridors, to rezone to the Walkable Urban Code. As you point out, trying to maximize the investment along light rail in the concept is a good thing in the bill. I certainly don't dispute that. But again, we want to be thoughtful about where that investment occurs and how that occurs and make sure that it occurs in the right way. And so I think Phoenix is leading the way to have those properties identified by the community to say, where does that intensity and that density make the most sense? What are the kinds of things that we need to make sure that we're getting out of that process? And rezoning, for a variety of reasons, is one of the only opportunities that the cities have to do that, to collaborate with the property owner. And so places like South Phoenix are now positioned to have the WU code be deployed in those places to make sure that we're getting, where we can, opportunities for affordable housing or mixed use and walkable development. I think that's the other thing. It's not just about transit proximate development, it's about transit oriented development. And that's one thing that the bill currently doesn't address is how are those buildings or those structures interfacing with the street to make sure that the people that are living there are able to access transit in a safe and convenient way.
Okay, thank you. I'll save the rest of my questions for after the presentation. Thank you.
So in addition to our work with Planning and Development on Initiative 2, we'll work on providing additional framework for Initiative 1, prioritizing new housing in areas of opportunity within the upcoming general plan update. In addition to continuing our work on the plan's initiatives, we'll be completing an updating housing needs assessment for the city with the aid of Bloomberg Associates. In this analysis, we'll be able to quantify the current need in terms of units and income categories that will allow us to update the 2019 numbers included in the adopted plan that you see on the right. This updated data will allow us to develop revised metrics and help inform further program and policy recommendations that we'll bring back to City Council for consideration. This concludes our update, and we're happy to take any questions at this time.
Councilwoman Stark.
Thank you, and this may be directed towards Josh. One of the biggest complaints I've heard over the course of my career is time is money, and that adds to the cost of what's being constructed. I think there are a couple bills in the legislature that are thinking through some ways to ease some of the problems with getting housing built. But what is the city doing specifically to try to expedite and make sure we're getting permits out the door to help people build? I mean, I know in the past our priority, and I don't want to get Chris upset, our priority was commercial development and industrial, but perhaps housing right now should be our priority. So what are we trying to do to address?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Stark, over the last 2 years, we've taken a long look as we shifted our service model to be more electronic about how can we most efficiently intake those plans, process those plans, and get those plans approved and set up for permits. One of the things that we did very early on at the onset of the pandemic was add a new team lead for our residential section. We, at a time, only had one, and now we have two. So we have two primary points of contacts for residential development as they come in. We've also looked at streamlining our process to make sure that we are breaking down some of the things we put in place. I think as we dealt with our new service model, you'll see some of those changes coming about relatively soon with respect to what we're doing with pre-log and how things are quickly getting in line. So I'm very excited about that. It's an ever-evolving sort of process to, asking ourselves, are we continuing to serve our customers on our and everybody that we engage with in the best way possible? And so I'd highlight the addition of a team lead. As Ms. Keating brought up during her presentation, we've identified specific teams that work on affordable housing housing projects. And again, as part of the time, going back to planning with the community, I think where Phoenix has led the way is identifying those parcels that have identified by the community that says we're okay with the apartments or more multifamily or more height and intensity here. And that really does, I think, eliminate a lot of the pushback you'll get, because as a community they've come together and said we want to see that here.
Thank you. And, I'm very supportive, for example, with the subdivision plats being more administrative. They're really, as long as they meet the zoning requirements, you should be able to bless them as opposed to council. But one other question, and, I've thought about this, is like standardized plans. Do you think our city would be willing to work with other cities and just have one plan review? Because these standardized housing plans are built everywhere in the state. And perhaps then we could save some time that way as people come through the door, especially for those starter houses. And just all we need then is a plot plan, but that plan has been approved for Queen Creek, for Phoenix, for Prescott, for Flagstaff, and maybe we could do some things like that, get really creative in trying to find ways to help with the process of time.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, absolutely. I think everything's on the table, and where we can find a place to input some efficiency into our process, follow some best practices on others in the state, we're certainly all ears and happy to consider.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just hope we continue to look at ways to improve our process to ease the time for people out there trying to build affordable housing.
Go ahead. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. So back to kind of the timelines and benchmarks that we have for this plan, do we have projections on when we will hit certain benchmarks, like let's say 30,000 units created or preserved, 40,000, et cetera? And would you say we are on track?
Madam Chair, Vice Mayor Ansari, I would say that we are on track to meet the units and the goal of 50,000 units. We're tracking ahead of that.
Okay.
We haven't projected out specifically when we expect to have a certain amount of units created towards that goal, but we do track every quarter.
Okay.
We work with information from planning and development as well as the information that we keep on the preserved units and update those numbers on a quarterly basis. Part of the updated housing needs assessment that we are going to undertake with Bloomberg Associates will help us perhaps look at some new goals to see where we might add to that 50,000 unit goal, where we might differentiate between the affordable, the workforce, and the market rate units to further define what goals we should have. Oh,
I see. Okay. So following that assessment, will you be able to tell us kind of what percentage of those new units will be workforce affordable? Is that going to help hone those goals in a little bit better?
Correct, yes.
Okay, I see. And then in terms of some of the target dates for goals in the housing plan, can you elaborate on why? My understanding is that we're only 10% of the way and only in the research stage for the affordable housing initiatives in particular, and only 15% of the way towards updating the zoning ordinances to expand housing options, both of which had a target date of 2021. So I guess those are the areas that I feel require the most urgency, and it seems that we are not on track. Can you elaborate on why that is and if that's changing?
Madam Chair, Vice Mayor Ansari, those two particular sub-initiatives of Initiative 2 are the text amendments that we talked about earlier in the presentation and that Josh relayed. So certainly those are initiatives that we've worked in collaboration on providing research for, and as Josh relayed, we're excited to get started on those. But yes, there's some work to do.
So those ones we are 2 years behind?
That would be correct with those initial targets. Yes.
Okay. I guess for me, that's an area where I feel that's unacceptable. I understand the variety of reasons that is, and the pandemic was here as well. But I think had we moved on those quicker, maybe we would be better off when it comes to our affordable housing crisis. So for my priority moving forward would be urgency on that front. Yes, we are creating significant amount of market rate housing. That's happening organically. And, I can speak for my district, whether it's downtown or Levine, there's no issue with market rate housing going up. But I think we need to be much more proactive as a city in enacting policies to make affordable housing process. And I fully agree with Councilwoman Stark on streamlining permitting processes, making that quicker for folks to even want to go into that work. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Councilwoman O'Brien.
Thank you. I'm excited that we saw some good movement in folks accepting the incentives to take our housing choice vouchers. Where are we at we have 7,300 housing choice vouchers, but do we have enough folks who are willing to take those? Because it seems like I hear quite often stories about folks who have the vouchers, and they have them for, is it about a year, and still can't find somebody to take them.
Madam Chair, Councilwoman O'Brien, we have 7,700 vouchers, but because of the budget authority from the federal government, so our utilization of our vouchers is about 87% because we increased our payment standards. So the higher the payment standards, the less voucher holders we have. So it's a balance, trying to balance the two. But what we are seeing currently is when we issue a voucher, we give the voucher holder 6 months to look for a unit. And currently, it's about 56% success rate of those voucher holders finding a unit.
56% success rate for our voucher users.
Yes, and I have to admit that the landlord incentive program that was approved by this committee and went to council has been a great success because that has helped our residents find homes. If we did not have that, the percentage would have been worse.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I do also support Councilwoman Starks and Vice Mayors that we would streamline as quickly as possible the processes so that we can help folks build more units. And while I realize we are having organically the market rate units built, every time I have conversations with developers that want to come to District 1, what they tell me is they can't afford to build affordable units without some kind of subsidies or assistance. And even building affordable rate, market rate is difficult because it's so expensive to build right now. So thank you for working with our stakeholders. And I know that this is a huge uphill battle, but I do appreciate all the work that everybody's doing. We just need to keep working on it. Thank you.
Thank you. I have lots of thoughts. In particular, I want to go back to the ADU conversation. Can we move that process faster in the sense of can we get out into the community, get the stakeholders moving, and get it done get it in front of us by July?
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, it's certainly something we could evaluate. I can't guarantee the outcome of our process, but I assure you, we hear the urgency. We are committed to moving as quickly as possible in collaboration with you and the community to get these things to you so that you can take action.
Okay, because if that's not possible, can we have it in front of us by September, the first week of September, our first?
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, if you could give me an opportunity to go and put together a schedule, I think that's certainly realistic for us.
And then you could come back to us in March to update us.
Madam Chair, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. The other piece is metrics. I would like to see, I'm going to go one step further than Vice Mayor. I would like to see the metrics, and I would like to see the date and timeline for all of this to happen. We are behind, and we need to move. And so I'm just giving directives and hoping my colleagues accept my directives, but I appreciate everything, but I want dates that you're going to come back in front of us and say we're approving and we're moving all these dwellings in pieces. I want to congratulate you on the voucher piece of the 60%, but I want to get to 100%. So what's that going to take? So in March, I'm going to ask you to come back and give us ideas on what it's going to do to make sure we hit 100%. And that way we have a different type of problem in that space. I do agree that, and this is Josh's area, that we do need to move the process faster. That's what we keep hearing from our developers and those that are wanting to come in. I guess my question on the voucher piece, and this is where I go because I'm right now in the middle of Central Avenue and it being built out, is how do we incentivize those developers then to assist or help us providing vouchers to them? I know it's a community property, not community, property rights and everything else, but how do we then incentivize some of these developers to take on some of the vouchers or the affordability? Because that is the struggle that I'm having right now in Central.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, an approach we have deployed in other rezoning cases is, as a condition of rezoning, we've stipulated some provision of affordable housing. Now, generally, that's been associated with something that's got LIHTC funding with the state. We could certainly, in collaboration with the housing department, see if there was a way we could effectively administer a stipulation as a condition of rezoning for some other type of affordable housing provision. So happy to investigate that further. Okay,
and you could investigate and come back, at least say this is what we're working on in March?
Madam Chair, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. The other curious one is the mobile home tax amendment. What's that about?
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, we initiated 3 text amendments related to mobile homes. One was related to allowances for improvements or addition of mobile homes where there's some non-conforming. Many mobile homes are built on zoning that doesn't allow for them, so they're in a condition that's called non-conforming, where you're not allowed to do much beyond what's there today. We're looking to remedy that. The second one was eliminating the requirement that they are a minimum of 10 acres in size. We think that the smaller mobile home parks should be something that the community would have an opportunity to look at. And the third was a potential retention affordability framework for, is there a way that we can incentivize maybe some investment on a mobile home property while allowing those residents to stay in place? And so those are the 3 options we initiated, and we're looking forward to coming back to the council to report on progress on those as well.
Okay, thank you. I'm assuming, and it's a big assumption, so I'm going to verify, you will be at the March, I want to say 1st, 7th, I don't know, I'm moving, I don't have my calendar in front of me, but the one that we are talking about, or actually the committee is talking about the mobile home.
Madam Chair, that is correct. I believe we're scheduled to provide an update on those TAs then as well.
Okay, so that way then this piece also fuses into that conversation. I'm just looking in a very holistic way right now. Anybody else have any other feedback? Well, I'm hoping we have some people that have some comments. I'm hoping that the ADUs moves faster so that I can put a 19-year-old son in an ADU and he can have a very independent life. And it's not just the how would I say, my mom and dad or my mom living there, but I also am looking for an ADU for my son. Just a little cheekish joke. I have for item 4, Nicole Rodriguez.
Good morning. You guys could hear me okay, I hope?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you. I wanted to comment on several things I've heard brought up today. It's going to be really hard to be concise, but I'll be quick and brief as possible. And I did want to just start off too by, we're talking about SB 1117 quite a bit, Kaiser's bill. If anything, that bill has brought to surface a lot of good topics today, so I applaud the bill for that. And I know it was mentioned on this agenda item about 1117 in various ways, it being a heavily flawed bill. But if we're being honest, this housing affordability plan is heavily flawed. So if we're being honest here, really what we're looking at is that we're still making it easier to have a swimming pool than an ADU. We're providing more land, more house. We're providing more land and more housing for cars than we do for people. We require more space to house cars on our properties than we really should be. And looking at this in the full spectrum, most low-income people do not have vehicles or can really afford to upkeep them. And so why are we still having exclusionary zoning practices where we have parking minimums that really don't equate to anything that makes sense? But we're still putting it in areas like TODs and requiring unnecessary cost into those developments, which goes back onto the renters or the buyers, which then quote unquote becomes those luxury homes. And when I look at this too, this affordable housing plan, I doubt that it's really there for anything other than this is just business as usual. But then we formulated it into a housing plan to get funding, federal funding, I guess. But there's nothing of substantial impact that's in this plan to really make a dent. I have heard that today. We're acknowledging that. But when we talk about neighborhood character and what's appropriate, that's exclusionary zoning. And I heard that for ADUs.
Ms. Rodriguez, time has run out for public comment. We'd ask you to wrap up your comments, please.
Okay, thank you. And one last thing, we're talking about streamlining the process. Let's rethink how we utilize our VPCs, which is a very privileged group of people. I happen to serve on the Encanto VPC. Maybe it's not always the best avenue to put text amendments through. Let's have a discussion about that. And I have been in discussions with Josh and other community members about it, but let's really be serious about this and get it on the table.
Thank you. The next speaker is, I have so many papers in front of me. Corey Kincaid.
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yep. Okay, perfect. Thank you. First and foremost, I want to take just a minute to say thanks to everyone who has put all the time and effort into both the housing plan and the current work. I understand that these items do take a lot of effort, takes a lot of moving pieces, and there's a lot of complexity. So first and foremost, thanks. I would, however, I think second both the comments of the several of the members here on the committee today around the fact that we're not. It's really not possible, I don't think, for us to say that we're on track for addressing our overall housing gap and needs, and in particular in the area of affordable housing. So if we focus specifically just on that, my understanding based on the numbers here is that against a 2019 study target of a need of nearly 100,000 affordable or subsidized units, we really are looking at about only 4,000 across, it's been now 4 years since that study. I suspect that number has not gotten any smaller in terms of the need. So when we talk about the velocity, unless all of us are going to be here to review the outcome of the plan 100 years from now, I don't think we're actually remotely on track. To that end, I think that then clear, measurable outcomes are necessary. And by that, I really do mean saying, hey, what is a current, whether it's a timeline or a duration that normally takes for a particular project for review, or it is a certain number, but we need to actually put some stakes in the ground that say by X date we'll have this many. So I'm excited to see the work that sounds like it's forthcoming with additional measurable quantities and metrics, as well as projections to say just how far are we from the gap, and based on the growth of the need and the growth of our housing reservations, when are we going to break even, or just how large is that? The last comment I would make very briefly as it relates to some of the dialogue around the Senate bill, I do think first and foremost, if there are concerns around a Senate bill that would preempt certain zoning at the city level, the number one thing that the city collectively can do to address that or to diffuse that is, of course, to take bold, rapid action to demonstrate that things like ADUs, better transit-oriented development, and more streamlined timelines are going to happen very quickly within the city. So with that, thank you again.
Thank you. Okay. Ryan Boyd.
Morning, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. Ryan Boyd with the Urban Phoenix Project for the record. Just here, really commenting, you've already heard a lot of it, but I think the challenge here is that it feels a little disingenuous to suggest that we've not had the research nor the opportunity to act within the last 2 years, having missed the deadlines and the targets for various really simple improvements. You have a very talented staff, some of the best in the state, honestly, here working for you in planning and housing, et cetera. And we have models from Flagstaff with an affordable housing bonus program, one in which you can provide zoning entitlement bonuses specifically for 100% affordable units. You can design that however you want, but we've not acted on that. We've not even initiated the actual text amendment. I'm happy to see that it's finally coming. It's been something we've been asking about for a long time now, but we can't even have those conversations in the neighborhoods unless there's something on the table. So we really emphasize the need that we can act. We have the models, whether that's casitas and ADUs that have been in place in Mesa for years now and in Tucson for recent research being conducted. We know from the Morrison Institute the barriers that exclusionary zoning have. Heck, we know that just from common sense, 10,000 square foot minimum lot sizes are going to be a lot more expensive to build for houses than a smaller minimum lot. And there are a lot of places within the city of Phoenix where 10,000 minimum or even 1 unit per acre are the norm. So there are a lot of actions we can be taking. We are, I guess, encouraged by some of the conversation here, but it's something we were encouraged of 2 years ago. When July 2020, we had adopted the plan unanimously. We were very excited and we hoped to see a lot. And we're coming up on 3 years and we haven't seen much. So we really are looking forward to the steps coming out of this meeting. And thank you for your time and looking into this. We hope to see real actions coming forth in the next few months.
Thank you. Those are all the virtual comments. And then I have a template here. Will that go into the record?
We do record we have a listing of each of the virtual speakers for today.
Okay. I have a different type of template. It's these are email comments. So will those go into the record? Do I have to read them?
You do not need to read those. If there were e-comments that were submitted,
Okay.
those also go into the record.
Okay.
But it's up to your discretion, Chairwoman.
Thank you. I would just prefer it to go into the record. And it's basically talking about affordable housing as well as necessary zoning amendments to permit ADUs, duplex, triplex, townhome development, mobile home parks, and denser single-family neighborhoods. It's talking about duplexes. I believe this is a lot that's in some of it is in the 1117. Incentivizing the construction of affordable housing, as well as implementing a broad community land trust program. And the other one is building more duplexes, townhouses, developing incentive programs for developers to build actual workforce housing instead of luxury apartments, and ending exclusionary zoning. So those are some of the comments. I figure I put it on the record. Appreciate what I would like to see is that the comments that were made, to look into those comments and then bring them back in March so that then we could have a robust conversation as around those pieces. There were some really great comments, and for us to see where they're at and where they fall in the metrics and the timeline. Appreciate it. Oh, Vice Mayor, sorry.
Thank you. I also want to echo a lot of what the commenter said. I think everything Ryan Boyd said, I agree with 100%. Nicole Rodriguez, I think we need to get away from exclusionary zoning entirely. I don't think there's an excuse for why ADUs have taken 2 years. I have hypotheses as to why, but I think it's unacceptable and we need to move very quickly on that. I also want to ask, a couple months ago, I don't remember if it was in this subcommittee or CCI, but I had asked about eliminating parking minimums along transit-oriented development, along where in the future we'll have BRT, light rail, et cetera. what would it take to move that forward quickly as well? Because I think whether it's the cost of parking that will make it easier for developers to provide affordable housing and increasing transit usage, that has been very successful in other cities.
Madam Chair, if I may. Vice Mayor Ansari, when we presented to the Planning Commission back in January, we proposed 3 phases. The third phase was looking at initiating a text amendment in May of this year to look at parking requirements for the walkable urban code in our TOD areas.
So in May, we would initiate that process?
That's correct.
So when would we be able to adopt such a policy?
Madam Chair, Vice Mayor Ansari, I think we would need to put together a schedule where we would be looking at the 3 mobile home text amendments, the 3 housing associated text amendments, and then the 3 text amendments we were looking to initiate in May. And understanding from a staffing standpoint, how effectively can we manage those through the hearing process simultaneously. I assure you that we understand the urgency of this subcommittee in the community, and we'll report back in next month to let you know specifically what a schedule could look like that we could effectively administer.
Okay, thank you. I very much look forward to that and look forward to supporting those and any other policies that you can put forward that would make the creation of affordable housing easier in our city. Thank you.
Thank you. So Josh, you and I have been working on this on Central Avenue, on the WU code, the parking, affordability. So it's actually in the collective is here right now in the sense of we've been working hard on this, so now it hits. So I think we're moving. Everything's moving. So appreciate all the comments. Appreciate everybody. We'll see you in March. Thank you. My next item is the Super Bowl recap.
Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee, today I'm joined by Interim Deputy City Manager John Chan and President and CEO of the Arizona Super Bowl Host Committee, Jay Perry. We're going to give you an overview of the very successful Super Bowl 57 experience that concluded on February 12th of this year. There are a few individuals I would like to recognize, though, that are in the audience, some of them, and some of them are not. Devney Marley from DPI, Zandon Keating, Sarah Demery, Jesus Sapien, Dan Wilson, Felipe Moreno, Marcus Coleman, Eric George, who manages our major special events, Jason Blakely, and from the police department, Commander Lee, and from the fire department, Chief Alexander. Those all were some of the people. I mean, there were quite a few other people that were involved. Those are some of the key people that spent the last year really preparing to make sure we had a successful Super Bowl experience. I do want to thank the host committee, also the city departments, and also the multi-agency public safety teams that really made the 10-day schedule events an outstanding and safe experience for so many Arizonans, but also visitors from outside the state of Arizona. But before I turn it over to John Chan, who's going to say a few words about some of the numbers, and again, a lot of the numbers are preliminary because they still have to do a lot of number crunching, things of that nature. But we do have some information to give you. We have a short video that really does bring to life the experience that a lot of us experienced in the last few days, and some of you as well when you went to see some of those events and activities. So if we can just run that first video, that'd be great. Thank you.
And today was the first day of the Super Bowl experience inside the Phoenix Convention Center.
Phoenix, Arizona, it's the 2023 NFL Honors.
So, Madam Chair, when I say Super Bowl the last year, I say John Chan.
Thank you, Inger. Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee, thank you for allowing us to be here to summarize some of the highlights of Super Bowl 57. I think for me personally, there were two big takeaways. Number one, successfully executed, and number two, exceeding expectations. I think the successfully executed part really speaks to the planning and coordination between city departments and our strategic partners for over the past year. There were no major issues that we could not deal with. Everything went very smoothly. I think Jay can attest that the NFL was very pleased with how everything went. In terms of exceeding expectations, you saw a lot of the numbers and statistics on the video, and I think all of those numbers really exceeded the initial projections. I can speak, for the fan event at the convention center, all of those days exceeded expectations and original projections. Just to highlight on a few things, from a media coverage standpoint, the Super Bowl was broadcast to a worldwide audience of more than 113 million viewers, making it the third most watched television program of all time. In addition, the media center was housed at the convention center, and that event had more than 6,000 credentialed local, national, and international media members here to cover the game, the press conferences, and other stories about Phoenix. The city's communication team was very active on social media, posting content about the city on social media platforms. This generated more than 6.5 million impressions during this period. This information included know before you go messaging, recruiting messages, employee profiles, and just highlighting some of the events around what was happening in Phoenix. Another piece of the city's communications effort was downtown community outreach. So in conjunction with the Community and Economic Development Department, Planning and Development, Downtown Phoenix Inc., and the host committee, they conducted more than 55 meetings with the business and community members in downtown Phoenix. Again, attendance exceeded expectations. Not only local residents, and you saw in the video a lot of local residents attended, but we also project that more than 100,000 visitors to Arizona were here for Super Bowl 57. Another significant accomplishment by city staff was a zero waste initiative. So in 2015, the diversion rate for Super Bowl events in 2015 was 73%. And for this past Super Bowl, our Public Works Department, working with the NFL and the host committee, set a very high bar to achieve a zero waste event, which means a 90% diversion rate. 90% diversion rate. So between February 4th and February 12th, the city's Public Works Department collected more than 101 tons of waste material from Super Bowl events at the convention center, in the downtown area, and at the entrance to Hance Park. And about 80% of the materials were recyclable. So all this was diverted from the landfill. Overall diversion rate for the city of Phoenix, collections made during Super Bowl, was 92.61%, making this a zero waste event. That's a significant accomplishment, and really our Public Works Department really deserves kudos for taking the lead on this. Light rail, public transit, that was also hugely popular. We saw that in the numbers. We saw that with reduced traffic congestion, reduced demand for parking in the downtown. The light rail system served 250,000 local residents and visitors who traveled to downtown Phoenix. This was enhanced by a ticket partnership between Valley Metro Rail, the City of Phoenix, DPI, and the host committee. The program provided no-cost light rail fares to fans attending Super Bowl events at the Convention Center, at Hance Park, and at Footprint Center. This was very, very widely used and very successful. And in addition to public transit use of micromobility, e-scooters, rideshare, autonomous rides, all of those formats saw significant use during Super Bowl. And just to kind of wrap this up, the last piece is Sky Harbor. On Departure Monday, the Monday after the Super Bowl, this was the single busiest day in the history of Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport. More than 200,000 visitors came through the airport on that day, nearly 1,700 takeoffs and landings. TSA wait times at security checkpoints were no more than 22 minutes. Not more than 90,000 passengers were screened, including charter and private aircraft operations, and more than 47,000 total bags checked. So those are just some of the highlights. There's a lot more things that city staff did. There's a lot more data about visitor spending and hotel room data that we'll be collecting and reporting on in the coming months. But that's just a highlight of some of the city things. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jay Perry. One of the many things that the host committee did was to produce the outdoor free fan festival at Margaret T. Hance Park. So we're going to show a quick video about some of the highlights from that event, and then I'll turn it over to Jay.
Welcome to the Super Bowl experience presented by Lowe's Arizona Super Bowl Host Committee. We are so excited to have you guys here. We have been going on for 4 days. There's a lot happening. Today is the first ever, in case you didn't know, the first ever NFL watch party presented by Verizon. There has never been an official NFL watch party in any host city until Arizona.
Thanks, John and Inger. Madam Chairwoman and members of the subcommittee, it's so good to be with you today and to talk about our success around Super Bowl 57. John set up a lot of the numbers, and what I will tell you is I will share some anecdotal feedback in addition to some numbers. It was a huge success on all accounts. And the city of Phoenix, the residents, the staff, and all the downtown partners played a huge role in that. So first and foremost, I want to say thank you and start with that. If you were in downtown Phoenix, I know you felt the vibe. It comes through a little bit on the video, but not as much as when you see it in person. And so what I will tell you is, looking back to when we first bid on Super Bowl and hosting it in 2018 and received the bid from the NFL, it's a really competitive bidding process. And so we were thrilled, of course, to be hosting Super Bowl for the 4th time. And at that time, we set really lofty goals for ourselves as a community to host the best Super Bowl yet. And that came directly from our board of directors. Our executive board chair, Larry Fitzgerald, of the host committee said, yeah, let's just do the best one ever. And so what I will tell you is, collectively, we delivered on that. And to the NFL, to the viewers, to the visitors that participated here on the ground, and to our local communities, and I'll talk a little bit about that. We wanted to share some early figures, some anecdotal feedback, but this was incredibly positive all the way around, and a win for Phoenix and for Arizona. All eyes were on Arizona the week of the game. John mentioned over 6,000 credentialed media. That's a record for the NFL. And they came from more than 24 countries, and we're all there in our Phoenix Convention Center broadcasting for that 10 days leading up to the game. At Hans Park, we had more than 50 broadcast partners operating there from the park and telling the story of downtown Phoenix. John mentioned the game was broadcast in more than 200 countries and in more than 25 languages. So again, all eyes were on our community. I will tell you, the viewership peaked on game day at halftime with Rihanna. And we've gotten amazing feedback on Rihanna and her show, and 118 million people were watching that. So Super Bowl put Phoenix and Arizona squarely in a leadership role and in a highly visible role here in the U.S. I want to tell you that from when visitors arrived at Sky Harbor Airport, they were greeted with decor, with friendly staff, with our volunteers around the airport who were rolling out the red carpet to say, we are glad you are in Arizona. And I heard that time and time again. And I want to thank Sarah personally for all the work that you and your staff did to get us ready in the months leading up. So we rolled out the red carpet, and that just continued when they were here throughout the week, all the way through to when they left Sky Harbor on the busiest day in the airport's history, again, completely seamless. One of my NFL colleagues was leaving the handoff press conference at Phoenix Convention Center at about 10 o'clock, said, I'm going to get to the airport early because I know it's going to be busy. I got a text message from him, and he said, smooth sailing, no delays, this is unbelievable. And so really, hats off to the airport. Now let's get down to Phoenix. Phoenix hosted over 20 major events the week of Super Bowl, and that includes anchor NFL and host committee events that you saw in the video, Super Bowl Experience at Hans Park and the Phoenix Convention Center, the NFL Honors Award Show that's a broadcast production from Symphony Hall, the Bud Light Music Fest and NFL Opening Night at the Mercury & Sons Arena. The Super Bowl 57 media party was at the Farm at South Mountain, and so that was a great showcase of Arizona. And as John mentioned, many, many press conferences took place, including the kickoff press conference where we did a land acknowledgement from the NFL for our indigenous communities, and then wrapped up with the handoff ceremony on Monday morning. We had over 45,000 credentialed individuals working the Super Bowl. That is an amazing stat to me. Those were locals, but so many folks came into Arizona to work on it. We had over 5,000 Team AZ volunteers across the valley, all of whom passed through our headquarters location at Arizona Center. They were brought to downtown Phoenix and then dispersed around the valley. And those volunteers represented 45 states and 20 countries. I mean, it's an amazing international event. And through all that, downtown Phoenix was vibrant, buzzing, and over 300,000 folks, as John said, participated in the week of the events. That first ever official watch party is really quite something. That took the agreement of the NFL and their broadcast partner Fox to allow a host community to have that type of game day activity. And the energy was amazing, obviously complete with a flyover, which was kind of bone-chilling, if you will. It was really exciting. There was a lot of intention around sustainability that was mentioned and making sure that we were being environmentally friendly with all of our events. That included a partnership with Waymo and Electromechanica, which they were thrilled to be with us in downtown Phoenix. And lastly, I will mention our economic development efforts associated with the Super Bowl CEO Forum, where we entertained 70 CEOs from outside of Arizona to introduce them to our pro-business community and had robust conversations the days leading up to the game. And I know that will result in some new business projects that'll include high-paying jobs and also jobs with benefits. So stay tuned on more events around that. In the lead up, in the months in advance, we had many, many community projects, 39 events, including legacy grants that were given to nonprofit organizations in Phoenix and around the state. Our Business Connect program, which is our supplier diversity initiative, we will set records with that program in terms of getting our local businesses involved. Excuse me. So it's early days, as I mentioned, on reporting all the metrics. We love to measure things, and so stay tuned for more on all of that. We will conduct our standard economic impact study program with Arizona State University and anticipate that will come out in about the May timeframe. We do want to give a heartfelt thanks to the City of Phoenix and all the employees that both Inger and John mentioned, many of whom are here today. John and Inger were an incredible duo to work with on Super Bowl. I call John the godfather of Super Bowl. He wears that well. It's meant as a big compliment, John, just so you know. And there really was outstanding effort, but I will tell you there were outstanding results. And so all the planning in the 24 months leading up to this paid dividends. Let me see, who didn't we mention? I have to give a shout out to, as I mentioned, Sarah at the airport, Eric at the Phoenix Convention Center, Devaney at DPI, Zandon, who's here on our community outreach. That was a Herculean effort. Dan on the comms team was amazing with Know Before You Go. And I would just say they all stepped up and really embraced the opportunity and just delivered in a big way, and I think blew everyone away. So we want to say thank you. I'm going to stop and see if you have any questions. Thank you for your attention.
Any comments? Vice Mayor.
Just want to say thank you again to all of you. I think you covered it super well, but Inger, John, the team at the city, Devaney, everyone who was involved in the Super Bowl, I think I only also heard positive feedback, and especially from companies, executives, just fans who were here from around the country. Everyone was in awe of Phoenix, and especially how much the city has changed and how much there is to offer, from the art scene to cool restaurants and bars and coffee shops, and I think it was just amazing to see the energy. So thank you all so much. I know, I've been involved before I was ever on council with planning massive events, and I know that it's around the clock work. So thank you so much. The only question I have is, where is that big giant saguaro going to go now?
So the 44-foot saguaro had such a great time in Hance Park. We are going to find a new home for it, and we are working on that now.
Great.
And I am pleased to present, we're really excited to have that be an iconic element, right, of Arizona. And we partnered with the Saguaro National Park and the Desert Botanical Garden, and both of them saw a great uptick in their social media and interest in just education about our desert. So we really felt like it was a win. So thank you for mentioning that.
Amazing. Yeah, I happened to meet the artist who designed it a couple of weeks ago, and so it's
Mike
really cool
is
that
everywhere.
It was
Mike, the cactus designer, is just everywhere. He's a really good networker.
Yes.
Yeah.
But anyway, thank you all again. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Councilwoman O'Brien.
Congratulations to an incredible, I want to say week-long, but it was a little bit more than a week-long worth of events. You all did an amazing job, and thank you for being here today with us, Jay.
Thank you so much.
Councilwoman Stark.
And I want to thank everyone as well. And now we have a new nickname for John, the Godfather. I personally stayed at home. I kind of was a cocoon and didn't get involved in the events, but I had a lot of friends that did come downtown, and they loved the experience. I can't think of anything really negative that happened. So congratulations, and Thank everybody that's involved.
Thank you, Deborah.
So appreciate all the work, because I know what it takes to do big events. And 2 years is probably, you probably really are planning more than 2.5, 3, or at least starting, and then everybody comes together. So huge kudos to everyone that was involved, because it takes everybody's hand or manpower, woman power, and strength to lift such a great event. I happened to be able to attend the experience because my grandson, my kids and my grandson, or both grandsons, wanted to attend. So we attended the first Saturday because I didn't want to do the Phoenix or the local Saturday. We entered about 2 o'clock, which I was very surprised at how packed it was. But they said, no, you're much better. It's better that you're here at 2 o'clock because in the morning it was crazy. So I got to enjoy. I wasn't going to stand in the lines, and I wasn't going to sit in that space, but I just sat to watch and enjoy their smiles. Zoe, the little one, enjoys football, so the fact that he was able to get on one of the football teams and learn all the techniques and running and everything else was exciting. And then the 13-year-olds or the 14-year-olds now, just them getting on each team and taking pictures. So it was exciting for us as an adult, for me to sit back and watch it through kids' eyes, and then watch it through parents' eyes in the sense of, like, let's go do this and let's go do that together. I did the dancing, so I was with the DJ, and he had this, it was actually, I was like, oh no, I'm going to handle this. He actually made us do this dance, and we had to stand on a newspaper, and as the music stopped, your foot had to be on there. It couldn't be off of it. And little by little, they folded the newspaper. And at one point, I was on, who I was dancing with, my friend, where I was like, he's like, get on my back, hurry, get on my back. So I enjoyed that part as an adult. But it was an experience, and I'm glad it was an experience for our locals and those from out of state to see it and see it happen. We were very fortunate to have great weather. I was a little concerned, but the weather was great. And then the experience, the event on Margaret Hance Park, that was just a plus for everybody to enjoy a game that they weren't able to attend, but be out in the weather and enjoy one another. Now, I would like to say that I think the teams really made this Super Bowl. The back and forth kept you watching, kept you entertained, literally down to the 5 minutes and down to as you're counting. And I was rooting for Kansas City, so my team won. And the experience of all of that and enjoying it with family and friends was nice. Now, I want to go to the airport. I happened to be at a space and place where someone was part of the airport, and all I saw them do during the Super Bowl was look at their phone to say, oh my gosh, they added more they added more flights. Now I have to figure out how I'm going to get more employees. It was crazy just watching that element of it, of how they were on top of the airport and the departures. Valley Metro, kudos to them and all their staff and everybody that was part of it, but a lot of their staff volunteered and took up 12-hour shifts to make sure everything was running and moving. And kudos to our public safety who made sure that everybody was safe. And if there was a need, because I was in some of these big crowds, if there was a need, people knew where to go. And kudos to the whole Super Bowl team and DPI, because as I started at the very beginning, it takes a lot of people to lift one great space and one great game, and you lifted the Phoenix and demonstrated the Super Bowl. We can host that Super Bowl. So I want to just say thank you. I appreciate it. Now, you're working nonstop, so I'm sure your body's tired. So the Godfather is going to thank you. Well, spring training already started. We'll have to wait in summer season for a gathering of the Super Bowl committee and be able to go to a spa. So, kudos.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee. And it's on to the next major event, which is the NCAA Final Four next year. So we'll be busy planning that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I am going to ask if we can do 6 and 8 together, not together, but move 8 up, so that then item 7 is the last discussion, and I know we're running on time now.
Yes, Madam Chair. So coming to the table for items 6 and 8 is expansion of Central Business District, as well as 2nd Street north of Roosevelt parcel for disposition and redevelopment of RFP. Joining me here at the table is our Deputy City Manager, John Chan. We also have our Community and Economic Development Director, Christine Mackey, and then Zandon Keating, Deputy Community and Economic Development Director, and Jeff Stapleton, Program Manager with CED. Chris?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, we are pleased to be here with you today to continue the conversation that was started with this committee's recommendation on our new GIPLET policy to move that forward to the full council, which indeed was approved. One of the requests of this committee was to come back and discuss the potential expansion and options of the Central Business District to expand the redevelopment tool. As Ms. Spencer said, with me is Zandon Keating. Zandon is going to walk you through staff's thoughts for discussion here on the Central Business District. Zandon?
Thank you, Chris. Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. So first we're going to start off with what is a central business district. So a central business district by definition it's really the center of government, financial services, and other similar activity within a city. The city of Phoenix established our central business district back in 1961. If you think back to that time, Park Central had just opened. That was beginning to drag retail out of the center of downtown and really started the dying of downtown Phoenix. So the leaders at that time were really forward thinking and established the central business district really to encourage private investment in the construction of substantial new improvements within downtown. On your screen, you see the Central Business District as it is today in the red outline. The original one in 1961 was actually a very small area. It was just the core of downtown as we know of where those office buildings and the big office buildings and that sort of thing are today. In 1987 is when it was established to the area that you see today. That corresponded with a new redevelopment area for the government mall area and an expansion of the downtown redevelopment area. As you know, in 2020, we also modified the boundaries of the downtown redevelopment area to what you see on the map today. In 2018, there were several changes to the requirements or the regulations for a redevelopment area. Some of the significant ones was there was a limitation on the size. That limitation was that a central business district could be no more than 2.5% of the total land mass of a city. In Phoenix, that's just over 12 square miles. There was also a restriction on the shape of a redevelopment or of a central business district in that it needed to be contiguous and geographically compact. And also, they could not have a length that was more than twice its width. So really creating either a rectangle or square kind of shape as opposed to the L shape that you see today. Phoenix is grandfathered, so it can maintain its shape in its current form unless we move forward with a change. So how is a central business district used? Of course, Phoenix is grandfathered. Originally, central business districts were created to respond to the federal government's General Service Administration. They would put out calls for certain services to be located within a central business district. This provided that, established that place for those to be located. Once a change is made to a central business district, no redevelopment projects are permitted within 1 year of that redevelopment designation. And then one of the main benefits of a central business district is when it is attached with a redevelopment area or overlays a redevelopment area, there's the greatest benefit of the GIPLET tool in that abatement can be offered when those two are stacked on top of each other. Outside of that, outside of having those two stacked together, the GIPLET tool is not as beneficial. So a few different options that we looked at. Staff isn't making a recommendation on an option. These are just for discussion points, some things that could be looked at. This is the kind of the first one that we looked at. This gives you sort of an east-west linear designation, anchored it on the north, just north of the State Fairgrounds, and then stretches all the way east to 24th Street. Another option, shifting it a little bit south, but still that east-west sort of linear orientation. This would stop on the north at Roosevelt, but then picks up a little bit more of the airport land reuse area, as well as a little bit of the Rio Salado redevelopment area. Looking at another possible option is more of a north-south orientation, going from 19th Avenue to 12th Street, so a little narrower on the east-west, but this picks up all of the Rio Salado redevelopment area to the south, even a little bit of Target Area B, but then also ends at Roosevelt Street on the north. And then a final option would be to shift it more towards the north. There's very limited redevelopment areas that exist within this area, but it could provide, if council's looking at or interested in designating some other areas as a redevelopment area, gives some options more towards the north along Indian School Road or on the west along 27th Avenue.
And Madam Chair, members of the committee, that is our presentation, and I'd love to have a discussion with you on this.
Councilwoman Stark and then Vice Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Can we go back to the option that shows Broadway? Thank you. So I like this one, and the reason I do is that it does incorporate Rio Salado and some of the exciting things we're going to do in that area, and I think that will really be a significant draw for the downtown, especially when we have light rail connections. I'm just wondering, what was, again, I like this, what was the thought process at stopping at Roosevelt and not going maybe a little bit further north to McDowell?
Madam Chair, Councilman Stark, previous to 2018 when we modified, previous to this modification that began underway in 2020 of our redevelopment area, it did go all the way to McDowell. As you want to do in a redevelopment area, you're trying to work yourself out of business. You're trying to get enough redevelopment to happen that it no longer meets the slum and blight categories that are put forth by the federal government. And so when we redid it, we couldn't get it past Roosevelt because we'd redeveloped all those areas and the incomes were much higher. So as we look at this area, staff agrees with you that this is a favorable area. This also includes our aviation land reuse area and also provides some tools for that as we now have the FAA approval to move forward.
Thank you. And then if we can go to option D, I think that's the last one. No, wait. Yes, that one. And this would be my second choice. And the reason why I like this, again, is because it captures a lot of North Central. And there's a lot of significant things going on there, especially along Park Central area. But then I guess my question would be, why didn't we go a little further north and capture Camelback? I'm just curious.
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Stark, as you look at those particular areas, we would have to see that the incomes and the slum and blight meet the designation of a redevelopment area. So maybe what I would suggest is that if this committee chooses, we could go ahead and do some of that research and bring it back to this committee to give you kind of a little bit more detail on those redevelopment areas as you kind of start to think about that recommendation moving forward.
Great. Well, again, I think my favorite option is C because the Rio Salado. I just think that's an excellent idea to capture that because long term, that's going to be a home run for the city of Phoenix, and it really is going to be a great draw. I mean, we've seen what has happened in the Tempe area, so I I think, again, but I'm willing to listen to all of you. I'm sure you have choices as well.
And Councilman Stark, to your point, the Tempe Town Lake area is in a redevelopment area in a central business district for Tempe.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you. I also like C, so it's okay. And I would love to ask some questions around that. So, first reaction seems like it would be phenomenal for plans around the Rio Salado, especially since, the city, we approved $27 million land acquisition in our bond program. As you know, Chris, we're working very diligently right now with developers who already own sites that are already zoned for industrial and having challenges there of trying to come to a compromise that still fits within the vision of Rio Reimagined. How do you see something like this spurring good development along the Rio Salado, and how would that benefit and be in line with something like our South Central TOD plan?
Madam Chair, Vice Mayor, as you know, as we talked about during the bond presentations, left to its own devices, the area along the Rio is zoned for industrial, and industrial developers have found the area to deliver just in time and what they're working on today. Lovely developments and great jobs that are going on, but not what the community has envisioned. This could potentially help the financial challenge that some of the developers have today with wanting to do the TOD-oriented development that the community has envisioned in the area and put it more on a level playing field for how industrial can deliver. So it would be a strong tool in causing the redevelopment along the TOD and the community program that was created.
So how does it affect areas that are already zoned? I mean, what exactly changes so that people are more enticed to do something that the community would want?
Madam Chair, Vice Mayor, as you know, the GIPLET tool that we've used to redevelop downtown Phoenix and used quite thoughtfully to cause redevelopment in downtown Phoenix is, when it is overlaid with a central business district and a redevelopment area, allows for an 8-year property tax abatement, which could help some of those more community benefit projects get moving forward. Where if it's just a redevelopment area, it is a 25-year excise tax, and for retail and office and other uses that are non-residential, the way the legislature changed that tool in 2016, it really is of no benefit to those type of uses. But the 8-year abatement is allowed for all types of development.
Okay, that's great. And then for residents that may, worry about gentrification, is there, in areas where we would maybe expand this, is there any risk of gentrification? I'm thinking specifically about an area like Grand Avenue that worries a lot about big development. What are some of the risks? And then maybe if then you could transition to some of the benefits.
Madam Chair, Vice Mayor, whenever you make an area enticing for development, there's always risk in trying to ensure that we keep the community's focus, that we keep the community benefit, but allowing areas to redevelop. So when you look at downtown Phoenix, when I first started here in 2014, the average property owner paid $17 per assessed valuation in their property tax. We have gotten city properties, university properties, county properties, state properties into production in private sector. So while the values of the properties have gone up, the pie has now been divided by a greater number of parcels. And so now it's about $15 per $100 assessed valuation. So while the assessed value, the value of property has gone up, the property tax has actually gone down because we've put properties that are owned by the city and other governments that don't pay property tax today into production that are now counted as part of the pie in paying into that. So there's a downside and a benefit both in the same area. When you look at and we're very thoughtful. We had a great meeting last night on the aviation land reuse area, and that is of grave concern to the existing community is gentrification. And they're worried that developers will find this, they'll buy private sector land, they'll leverage the city land. Our advantage in some of these particular areas is the city owns quite a lot of land in these areas, so we have a seat at the table when any decision is made, and we could bring those tools only to benefit when it is something that's in the community plan or when it's something that the community wants. And that's at the discretion of this council, and only this council could make that decision. So it could be leveraged to get what we want and not used at all to get what we don't want.
Okay. Well, I think one thing I did want to note is I'm glad that all of the 4 options include the future capital light rail extension. I think that's a great area for redevelopment in the next decade, so it's important that we set the stage for that for now. But I guess my final question is, what is the next, I know this is for discussion, what is the next step to then honing in on what the final option would be?
Madam Chair, Vice Mayor, members of the committee, what staff would like to do is go back and run some numbers on this particular on option D to give you now, these already covered these redevelopment areas. We could add redevelopment areas. We could look at the area along North Central to see if there's even an option there to create a redevelopment area based on federal guidelines. And then perhaps I would suggest we come back at your March meeting or your April meeting to give you that further guidance for you to provide that direction to staff.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much.
So, Chris, I would like to see a different option.
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to see an E of a combo of C and D, if possible. And if it's skinnier or not as wide, I'm just curious.
We'd be happy to. We'll bring a map around to each of the subcommittee members and have you take a look at that and make sure that we're meeting what you think, and then run those numbers for you.
Okay, because it sounds like it's C, D, and then if there's a combo, if it works, then it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So, all right. The direction is you'll come back with 3 different maps, and then from there we'll make a movement and send it to council.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. Now I'm going to go ahead.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to belabor this, but are you on a time table here?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Stark, we are not.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I am going to item 8. This is for action, right? Yes. Okay, so if we can just get to the meat of it, so we can go to our next discussion. Thank you.
Could you quickly just get to the meat of what we're asking?
Sure, absolutely. Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, thanks for having us today. We'll start briefly just to cover the location of the site that's going to be offered in the RFP. There you see it's between 2nd Street and the alley north of Roosevelt between Portland Street. It is not a particularly large site. It's just under half an acre. It does have downtown code zoning with a maximum allowable height up to 250 feet, and is currently activated by the Sparkbox temporary demonstration project, which was unveiled last month. Some background on this site. This goes all the way back to 2004 to the Row 3 residential project. The city was a financial stakeholder in the project.
Jeff, if I might, if
sure.
we could get to, I think the council has a hard stop at noon. If we could just get to what the request is for the mixed-use development, I think that would be wonderful.
Sure. Just getting to the last slide here.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, staff's recommendation is mixed-use development going forward, a request to go out for a request for proposal on this particular property. There is a request and come back to the committee for a recommendation to move forward. It would be our standard RFP point systems that we use for all of our projects. And if you have questions on that, Gretchen Wolf, our Special Projects Administrator, is here. That is our abbreviated version of how to move an RFP forward.
Vice Mayor, would you like to make a motion?
Sure. I do have one quick question.
Oh, go ahead.
Would it be possible to add affordable and workforce housing as a bonus point for this project? And similarly, I don't know if this would be a bonus point, but I'd like to have a preference for projects with greater density, if possible.
Madam Chair, Vice Mayor, we will absolutely put that in the recommendation that comes forward to the full council.
Okay, perfect. Would you like me to make a motion? All right, move to approve item 8.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? I hear none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those not in favor, please say no. The motion carries. Thank you. Okay, we're moving quickly. We have 5 minutes, and I will continue. I have a 12:30, So I will go as far as to maybe 12:15, 12:20. And if we need to continue the discussion, we'll continue it to the next month. All right. Item number 7, suite policy.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, we are here today as a follow-up from the formal City Council meeting to discuss with you our arena suite policy and other economic development initiatives. Just by way of background, the city entered into a development agreement in 1989 to build the new Suns Arena in downtown Phoenix. It did open in 1993. The city is the owner of the suite, but the Suns are the operator and maintain the suite for us. The arena hosts a wide variety of events, sports, concerts, other things. It's included as part of the operations for the arena. The city has access to the suite for all public events. Just by a little bit further background, in 1992, the City Council did adopt a policy that create the use of the suite to be implemented by the Community and Economic Development Department. So this has been a policy that has been in place now for 30 years that has created this. The use of the suite provides for 12 tickets for free, plus the ability to purchase 10 overflow tickets. As we look at that 1992 policy, part of what was created as the 1992 policy was the Phoenix Economic Partners. The Phoenix Economic Partners is an IRS nonprofit that is owned by the city, whose mission is to further economic development in the city of Phoenix and also oversee the suite. The process to acquire the suite is a documented process that is an administrative regulation through Community and Economic Development. It does require a suite request form. It requires a preliminary guest list and a post-event report as to how it was used. Further, as part of the sign-in sheet, the attendees do acknowledge that they will adhere to the city's policies that are there. As part of the 1992 policy that was approved by City Council, the approved uses for the suite are economic development activities, the hosting of distinguished guests, promotion of the city itself, enhancing relations with other public agencies, employee award programs. We have used that to recruit companies into the city of Phoenix, and we've offered it if a company chooses the city of Phoenix, we give them 3 games that they can have all 12 tickets to be able to bring their employees and assimilate them into Phoenix. And then activities for youth or developmentally disabled individuals, and they do use our suite for that. There are, as we look at suite usage for other than the city, the arena is owned. There was some discussion at the formal council meeting about the lease of the arena and what we could do there. So again, I'll acknowledge the arena is owned by the city, but operated and managed by the Suns. Phoenix Economic Partners that I mentioned earlier is the nonprofit entity that oversees the city's use of the suite. It's important to note that no taxpayer funds are used for the Phoenix Economic Partners. It is all private sector funding. The city cannot sell the suite, and the city rights on the suite are not assignable to anyone else. If the city is not using the suite for a specific event, PEP, the Phoenix Economic Partners, can place the suite into a pool that is marketed by the Suns. And if someone then takes the suite and uses it, buys tickets there, revenue goes back to Phoenix Economic Partners to further economic development activities within the city. And so I missed my click in moving forward with that statement. Events that are of greatest demand, if we go back to 1992, when the suite was used and sold and the funding that goes into PEP that is used for other things. Of course, the areas of greatest demand will be sold out concerts, playoff and finals for NBAA, the WNBA, and the Rattlers, and other events like that. Yes,
Chris, I have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
And it's about the Phoenix Economic Partners. It says if an entity leases the suite through the pool, then revenue is shared back with PEP to manage the economic development purposes. What are the purposes?
For the Phoenix Economic Partners, its stated purpose in the IRS regulations is to handle economic development. It might be for entertaining guests, it would be for visiting CEOs, it would be for recruiting companies, it would be for recruiting development. So the same purposes of which we use the suite that were approved by the City Council. As we look at one of the questions that came out of the formal meeting was other economic development initiatives that we utilize today. So in addition to having Footprint Center for Economic Development, we use other activities to attract new businesses, new development, new workforce opportunities, and that's really what we oversee. Those are the reason that we select those areas. Is economic development's responsibility is for attracting new companies, helping our existing companies grow and thrive and get new business, furthering workforce, bringing development into the market, and expanding our international activities are really the mission of economic development. So when we look at those other initiatives that we tend to use, they are cultural, chamber, and nonprofit events, and I'll go into detail of each one of these as I click through. Receptions for
Councilwoman
yes,
Stark
ma'am.
has a question.
On the chambers, is that just for the Greater Phoenix Chamber, or do we also do Arizona, and do we do some of the smaller ones like North Phoenix Chamber?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Stark, that's an outstanding question. It is the Greater Phoenix Chamber, but we also participate in the North Phoenix Chamber. We participate in the Hub. We participate in the Ahwatukee Chamber, the Hispanic Chamber, the Black Chamber. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Reception.
LGBTQ.
Yes, ma'am, we do. Yes, ma'am. We are a member. And then receptions for businesses and trade delegation. These days we have significant numbers of trade delegations that are coming in from around the globe, more than we've seen in the past, and I'll go in those in detail. Of course, trade shows, whether it is biosciences or healthcare or advanced manufacturing or other trade shows, we'll go into detail. National, international trade and attraction missions, again, I'll go into detail, and Phoenix Sister Cities delegations. So as I go to each one, just for a frame of reference, the cultural, chamber, and nonprofit events, it is typically an event, a program. It might be something at the Japanese Friendship Garden. It might be something at the Botanical Gardens. It might be a luncheon or a dinner with a thoughtful speaker or a speaker of topic or a chamber speaker. It's always focused on economic development, workforce, or recognition, or other programs of importance to furthering the city's economic development mission. As we are either receive attendance as part of an organization membership or we purchase it due to the topic. So it might be an item for the Greater Phoenix Chamber, it might be an event at the Black Chamber, or to Vice Mayor's point, the LGBTQ Chamber, or another program. We always offer them first to all city council members and then to city staff to attend as well. And that funding source is out of CED's annual budget. I do receive funding for marketing and for opportunities like this in my budget. Our next item is receptions for business and trade delegation. And again, that could be an event, could be a meeting that we host here at City Hall, could be a luncheon or a dinner where we're entertaining those dignitaries or delegations, could be a tour of or a luncheon at one of our co-working spaces or one of our hospitals, could be renting the bus for the tour that the delegation takes on. So it is focused on economic development's core missions, whether it's biosciences, manufacturing, sustainability, emerging technologies, development, or other point of interest. It typically includes city councils, typically includes city staff, but we have asked you to participate with us on any number of occasions to entertain those business and trade delegations that are coming in. We've had one in from the EU most recently, where we had more than 40 countries represented looking at trade opportunities for the city of Phoenix, and we hosted a breakfast. That funding source is out of CED's annual budget as well. We look at national, international trade and attractions missions. As I mentioned at the last meeting, we won't give up our secret sauce. It's how we are successful at attracting other international companies where other cities aren't quite as successful. But it is a trade delegation or attractions mission based specifically on economic development's focus, where we might be going after a company that is in another country. We might be going after a company in Canada or in Mexico or in Asia or in the UK, and we will take a delegation with us to recruit that company or multiple companies there. Again, focused on a very specific discipline that we're after. City staff does attend. We have in the past asked City Council to attend on our recruitment missions because, as we've talked about, it is important that the companies feel like they are welcomed by our elected officials. The funding source there, depending on where we're going, is CED or aviation's budget. The reason aviation's budget would be used in international activity and international recruitment, that does assist in them attracting international flights to Sky Harbor. So we do partner on those efforts together. When we look at our Sister Cities delegations, as you know, Sister Cities has been in operation now for, my goodness, I think we had our 50-year anniversary this year that some of you attended with us. And our delegations are based on a Sister City anniversary, a momentous occasion, a delegation invitation, or an invitation from a new sister, as we had just recently from Suwon, South Korea. CED and Sister Cities over the last 5 years have also worked diligently to add economic development recruitment opportunities to this as well, because who knows our recruitment opportunities in our sister cities better than our sister cities committees in making connections for us and introductions. City staff does attend. We always request that the council of that particular sister attends with us. A mayor attends with us on opportunities as well. That is funded by private sector. It does not receive any taxpayer dollars that go into it. When council members attend with us on those missions, it is fundraised by the Sister Cities organization to have the dignitary on official city business attend with us.
Councilwoman Stark has a question.
Just a quick question. I know one of the other activities of the Phoenix Sister Cities is the youth ambassadors. How's that paid for?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Stark, we do fundraising to be able to send our youth ambassadors to their countries that they are selected to attend. So we do fundraising through things like the Phoenix Sister City 50-year anniversary, through the Mayors International, through our global initiatives, through our trilateral trade conferences. So we privately fundraise for our kids. In some of the instances, parents will pay part or all of a child attending, but we want to ensure that the children, students, youth who are not financially capable of covering that have the same opportunity, and so we do private fundraising for that.
Councilwoman O'Brien.
Thank you. So again, when members from the City Council travel to their sister city, those funds come from Phoenix Sister Cities?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman O'Brien, that is correct.
Okay. And then when members of a council go on a trade mission, such as when we recently opened the trade location in Hermosillo, or when those members take the inaugural flights to a new international city, who pays for those?
Madam Chair, Councilman O'Brien, it comes from several sources, but typically it is the council office that covers it out of their budget when it is a delegation they want to go on. Now, if they are officially representing the city for a specific opportunity, that funding may sometimes come from community and economic development or aviation. If it is an inaugural flight and where we are trying to recruit more international flights, it could come from there, but most often it comes from the council office's budget.
But in all of those cases, the member traveling would be traveling on official city business.
In every instance, the member traveling is traveling on official city business.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please continue, sorry.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, that funding source is, of course, a nonprofit, that Phoenix Sister Cities nonprofit, private fundraising. No taxpayer dollars are used for Phoenix Sister Cities for our elected officials to travel. My annual budget does pay when I attend. It's part of our trade missions and part of the travel that I do when I attend a Phoenix Sister City or one of my staff members attends. When we look at other initiatives, we have, of course, the arena that we have now been using for 30 years to showcase downtown Phoenix. I'm recouping here our cultural chamber events, receptions for trade delegations, trade shows, international trade and attractions missions, and Phoenix Sister City delegations. And Madam Chair, members of the committee, we'd be happy to take any questions or dialogue you might have.
All right, who has questions? Councilwoman O'Brien.
Thank you. Chris, in the years since we've entered into the development agreement with the Suns Arena, how often has a member of council been invited to the suite for economic development purposes? And can you kind of go over the timeline of how often it's been used? And
Madam Chair, Councilman O'Brien, when you go back to 1992, and I am sad to say for my team member, the same woman has been handling the attendance for the arena since the arena was created. And so I did go back and look at her several months ago to see when it went back, and almost from the beginning, it was city council members were in the suite on occasions where they were there. We didn't keep the same records back then as to the thoroughness that we have as to what companies were there and who were in attendance, but we do have some pretty strong records that go back to that time. So it's been used since the beginning. I would say that staff and companies are in the arena suite far more often than a city council member is there for any purpose. My team uses it quite frequently to showcase Phoenix or to entertain dignitaries or our existing companies. We use it also for our existing companies. If you think they're not at a flight risk, if you think that other cities aren't doing what I do when I go hunting in other states to bring companies back to Phoenix and show them why this is a better place to be, we also want to make sure we keep our existing companies very close to us.
I think you just recently had a successful win with a company from one of our sister cities or neighboring cities recently. That was a big win. So I think that does point out that we always have to take care of those who are within our own city boundaries. Can you explain the value of having council members interact with those potential investors and company CEOs while in the suite?
Madam Chair, Councilman O'Brien, and in all that we do, you are the executives for the city of Phoenix. I can be the chief cheerleader and share the information, but it is always valuable for developers, for CEOs, for others to hear from the city council members what's important to you and how they would be valued by our elected officials who are who represent our citizens.
Thank you. And recently, the suite was used by a member of council and in attendance with many representatives of local unions. Can you explain the rationale and reasoning for using the suite by the council during that particular occurrence?
Madam Chair, Councilman O'Brien, in that instance, the council member did call to see if the suite was available and shared that they would like to use it for a workforce item. As is allowed in the policy, workforce discussions are allowed to take place in the arena, and that request was approved.
Okay. And the current suite policy gives the discretion to the Economic Development Department to invite members of council to use the suite. Has there ever been an occurrence when a member of council has approached you? I mean, you just gave an example, so obviously that happens. Is there a breakout between how often a council member might ask versus the department asking the council member?
Madam Chair, Councilman O'Brien, I couldn't give you a breakout of what the difference is, but I'll give you examples. There are times when council members will call and they're working with a specific company and call to see if the suite is available. In that instance, I will have one of my staff members who handles that specific area attend with the council member to discuss the opportunities and the investment and the growth in Phoenix. So that is an option. I've had council members who have called and said they would like to bring companies, small businesses from their district, and could we put something together to invite companies from their district together? In all instances, businesses are there that are either from the city of Phoenix or new companies that we are working to recruit. An example of when we've called a council member, we had a company that that was locating here in Phoenix. Arizona Fresh is a perfect example. And one of my team members was taking them to the suite that evening. They had investors in town. This is a very large, very high capital intensive project. So as is our policy, we reached out to the council member of the district who said they'd like to be in attendance as well. So those are just some examples of kind of the we call them, they call us.
Wonderful. And then you talked about the policy that states the use of the suite comes with 12 tickets with the option to purchase up to 10 more. Can you explain who pays for those tickets when the additional ones are needed?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman O'Brien, from multiple sources. So there are times when a company wants to bring 11, 12, 13 members with them. And in those instances, the company will pay for those extra tickets. And that happens quite often when they have asked to have a larger delegation there to pay for those extra tickets. When we are entertaining executives from, and that might be an existing company who has investors that are in town, when we are entertaining from outside CEOs to locate in the market or we're competing for a project, the Phoenix Economic Partners can pay for those tickets, and that is all private sector fundraised. No taxpayer dollars are used on that front.
Okay. And has a member of council ever paid you for tickets for use by them or a member of their group?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman O'Brien, I'm unsure of that answer. So what I'd like to do, the individual who handles our bookkeeping for that account is on vacation, and I'm not able to ask that question. I wanted to have that prepared for today, but let me get that fact for you and bring that back to each of you.
Okay.
I have paid.
And yes, and you've paid a ticket. I want to make sure there weren't any others. I remembered.
Yeah, I'm just going to put it on the record,
you have provided us a check. You are correct.
There is records.
And I believe that there's also another council member or two that have provided us a check. I just want to have all the absolute facts to provide to you.
Absolutely. I appreciate that.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. So you talked about when we're not using the box that it goes back to the pool for the arena to use. And if they do sell the tickets for that suite, then a portion of that goes into the Phoenix Economic Partners nonprofit, correct?
Yes, and if I could even go back just a little bit on that and provide a little clarification. Before we would move it forward, if we're not using it for an economic development purpose, we first offer it to our youth so that the youth can attend. It's important to note that Phoenix Economic Partners also supplies the soda and popcorn, so the youth that are attending can have a good experience as well, since they most likely wouldn't be able to afford it on their own. Phoenix Economic Partners does pay for refreshments for our youth and others that use it for that. But yes, if it's not being used, it could go back into the pool that the Suns oversees. So PEP could place it back into the pool with the Suns, and the Suns could list it for availability at that opportunity.
And it's listed, can you tell me how much the tickets are sold for if it were to get sold?
Madam Chair, Councilman O'Brien, each of the events is different, and that information is provided to us for each of the events by the Suns. So when the Suns weren't good, you could pay $60 for a ticket to be able to attend. Now you're well over $300 for a ticket to attend. So it really is based on that particular event that is in attendance. So, and the suite tickets are quite different than the fee for on the floor tickets. And so we would find out from the Suns what each of those events would be for, and we'd know for each event what that would be.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chair.
One start.
Thank you. So I, for one, will never use the suite. It's to me a matter of perception. But how do you ask council people to attend? What do you do? What's the process? Can you walk me through it?
So, Madam Chair, Councilwoman Stark, it will, as I mentioned earlier, there are times when the council members will call us and have us either put their small businesses together or they've got an investor in town or they're working through that process. In the other instances, it may be based on the chair of our committee. It may be based on a particular interest that that council member has or has expressed that they have, or a request from a company that is there that may say, I know this council member, are they going to be in attendance? So there's a lot of different ways that those decisions are made as to who would be in attendance.
And what about council staff? How do they factor in?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, when you look at the arena policy, we look at it two different ways. When a council member can't attend something, whether it's a speaking engagement, whether it is an event in the community, the council office will sometimes send their chief of staff to participate on their behalf. It's also important to note, as part of the policy, the staff members of the council are also city staff members, and so it could come from one or two different areas. The council member may ask that the staff member represent them, or the staff member may have reached out to us and they are a member of staff.
Thank you. And this may be more of a question for legal, but I know we have a contract with the Suns, and when we discussed this at the council meeting, Councilman DeCiccio talked about looking at possibly leasing the suite from time to time, and I think, would that take a change in the contract?
Councilwoman Stark, no, it would not. What the contract states is that the suite is allowed to be used free of charge by the city. It does not address leasing at all.
Okay, so we have opportunities when it's dark to make money for ourselves, right?
And Madam Chair, Councilman Stark, it would make money for the Phoenix Economic Partners, as that's what was approved by City Council in 1992.
But if there was a way we had more destiny over how we use the money, I guess that's what I'm looking for. So, I mean, I think if we had the ability to lease it ourselves, then we could direct the money to, like, the Parks Foundation or the Library Foundation. I know this is going to take some research. I'm not asking you, today. I get it. But I still think there is some value in looking at that. Even if we keep the rest of the policy that allows council to attend, that's another issue. But I do think they're looking at some of the data. There were a lot of times it was dark, and I think that would give us a real opportunity to maybe make some money. And I know a lot of our foundations need some help, our parks, libraries, as we continue to grow as a city, we need to help our foundations. So I would like to kind of pursue that and see what it would take, both legally and how we could set it up.
Madam Chair, Councilman Stark.
Because clearly there's a lot of times it is dark.
Madam Chair, Councilman Stark, and subcommittee members, that is something that we can definitely explore further and then bring that back to the subcommittee. So working closely with CED, working also with our law department.
And I realize it'll take some time. I know we've made 100 assignments today with regards to affordable housing, and I think affordable housing is probably much more critical at this point. But I would like to see that and have a discussion about that. If we continue to use the suite, and I'm just not going to be one that attends, but I do think that we need to get the most out of that suite and bring some money back to the city.
You're welcome. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Just one question based on the presentation and some of the questions. Chris, do you see any difference in terms of the impact that it has when a council member attends between any of the initiatives that you described? So whether it's utilizing the suite, whether it's attending, a delegation to a different city, whether it's, attending a conference or something, is there a marked difference between those, or do you kind of utilize them depending on, the circumstance?
Madam Chair, Vice Mayor, I would say we utilize them based on the circumstance and whether we are recruiting an international company and we need to go to them. A perfect example is our 40th anniversary Sister Cities trip to Asia, and leverage the opportunity to bring back a major, the largest investment in the city's history. to activating a landfill here in the city of Phoenix and having a great opportunity to showcase Phoenix. I would say that each one of them has a different value to us and really is dependent on the economic development strategy that we're working under at that moment to recruit.
Okay. That's helpful, and I think it was extremely helpful. Thank you for the presentation to really understand the wide variety of strategies that you do use to do this. I think for me in my 2 years in office, I'll say that economic development has become kind of a passion, and it's an area that I find very exciting to work on as a council member. I think you're right that it does, everyone, of course, adores you, and you do an incredible job, but I think we bring a different perspective and are able to really talk to the nuances of the district, the constituency, and so personally, I really like being in attendance when we're working on recruiting a company for District 7. It's been one of the most exciting pieces of the work that I've done, whether it's bringing manufacturing jobs to Levine or Estrella or new investments to South Phoenix. So for me, I said on the record last week, I utilized the suite one time. I was conducting business on behalf of the city. Arizona Fresh executives were in attendance and later made that investment. Personally, if it's something that is beneficial, that's where I think it is valuable to the city and for all things. As long as we are being transparent, I think it's important to have council members play an active role in making the pitch for their districts and their communities. But I would love to see more research. I really would be open to anything that has to do with leasing or selling the suite or anything, but I know that you all need more time to do that. I think whatever is best for the city of Phoenix, I am open to doing. So your recommendation at the end of the day is what I will look at above everything else. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Chris. I want to talk about Phoenix Economic Partners because I sit as the chair. I don't know how I got that position, but I got it. I sit as the chair, and I sit with Todd Sanders, who is, I think he leads a lot of it. I sit as the executor from the city, I guess, is whatever. And there's Todd Sanders, there's me, there's you, and then who else?
Madam Chair, if the way that the Phoenix Economic Partners is set up, the reason you're the chair is you're the chair of the Economic Development Subcommittee. So that has changed from whoever's been leading the Economic Development Subcommittee over the years since 1992. It is a representative of the city manager that is overseeing economic development, me, Todd Sanders, who's the president and CEO of the Greater Phoenix Chamber of Commerce, and the chief of staff to the mayor.
Okay, and I sit on as in the reason why I'm putting this out there. There are minutes. It's everything is taken, and one of the things that we spoke about through this process is that Todd and I would get together to try to go and hustle companies to come in, and on the blackout or dark days that they would we would entice them for the suite or get them to lease the suite. That's one of the pieces I feel as a chair that I have to do in order to recoup or make sure there's money there. The money that is sitting in there currently is used for all the programs, nonprofits. So nonprofits, schools, trying to think who else gets an opportunity through the education department that has been identified, and I think they're identified by their reading. Those that read so much their names will go into a lottery or into the hat, and then they'll pull the name out. That's my understanding of how Phoenix Economic Partners operates.
Madam Chair, that is correct. Mr. Valencia, who oversees our educational programs, works with the youth to attend. As an example of nonprofits, we've had teachers that we've had into the suite to watch a basketball game, and Phoenix Economic Partners did fund their refreshments for that evening to ensure that it isn't just used by CEOs and executives who are there. It is used by our nonprofits as well.
Okay. Is that money used anywhere else? Can you use it anywhere else? I think that's what some of the dialogue is. I need clarity on that.
Madam Chair, in the past, we have used it to, if there is a dignitary delegation in that is here for a dinner, we have used it to reimburse for a dinner. We don't have a means by which to do that in our city budget.
Okay.
And so we've used it to reimburse for that. If we are hosting, we had a delegation that was in and we hosted a luncheon. We've used it for that, always for economic development or youth activities.
And so what I recall last time, and I think it's been a couple months, the funding is very low. And so we're close to not having any funding in there, and that's when Todd and I had the conversation of like, hey, let's go work to replenish this account.
Madam Chair, we had our, I believe that was October, November of this past year, we have an annual meeting, and those minutes would reflect that you and Mr. Sanders did have that conversation.
Okay, I'm just saying only because I know that's an urgency, because it hasn't been, it's been used since 1992, correct? And every year it's used. Now we're close to the end of what was in there.
Madam Chair, you are correct. Without fundraising, we are very close to the end of the budget for Phoenix Economic Partners.
All right. I just wanted to add some clarity to that and give a bigger light of what the purpose or what it's used for. I have to say, in my world is obviously education, and I work a lot on workforce connection and pieces. And during COVID or during the pandemic, I worked on a workforce piece to demonstrate, did a lot of surveys out to many companies in partnership with the community college and economic development to see where the jobs needs were of the future. So it's called Future of Workforce. And in that space, we surveyed over 1,000 companies to say, what are the needs for the workforce that you're experiencing? And a lot of it was in the area of bioscience, technology, health, I can't remember the other one, even education. And those were the strands that were popping up and being identified through all the research that we were doing. In the process of that, I was working also with Phoenix Union in building what they call pathways and building where are the high demand jobs and what do we need to do, working kind of backwards as to what do we need to do in order to help the youth to get into those jobs as they're graduating at high school or go to a community college or university to get certificates. So you can see the dynamics of where my hand is all in workforce and all the pieces of how I want to move the future generation forward. Because for me, I'm in the middle, and I say I'm getting ready towards the retirement phase where we have to leave a future for our students or our kids and be able to have the education to get into those high-end jobs. Why I'm leading to this is because in this whole workspace, Chris has seen me in it in Fast and Furious, we were talking about the biosciences and in that space. And so what happened to me is there was a bioscience company that was coming in. I also have done a lot of work with prevention and cancer with our public safety, and there was also going to be a doctor that was being courted to relocate here on some cancer research. And so I was asked by Chris to participate. And the reason why I was asked, because I also asked her at the same time, or not at the same time, or conversations, if I have an opportunity to meet with some bioscience companies, I would like to speak to them on the workforce pathways and what does that look like and what do kids need to start doing. And I had that opportunity. And so that was one of the nights that I did attend. And lo and behold, in this whole process, it happened to be the gentleman's birthday, the CEO's birthday, and we had a great conversation. And what ended up happening is they ended up relocating in Phoenix. And so I'm just putting it out there of how the power of us sitting here has able to have that type of conversation in a very relaxed forum, in the sense of we're not rushed, we're not in our offices, we're actually just kind of like there to be able to have that conversation. What I also wanted to say in that space is that in sitting in those suites, I don't get to watch the game. I'm representing the city. I don't get the luxury of sitting and watching each play go back and forth or anything, because people are talking to me. And people are talking to me constantly within that suite. So I do it because it's part of my community service. It's part of representing the city. It's part of our job in order to do that. And I just hope, in the equity sense, as I said earlier, several meetings about that there's an equity piece in all of this, that everybody gets invited, or it's figured out how everybody can participate, so that then all of us are representing the city, and all of us are being able to do what we need to do in our best light or our best area. And so I think that's also very important, because sometimes we're not invited to a lot of things and others are. And so for me, it's about equity and making sure all of us are invited, and we can pick and choose if we want to go or not go. So that's just kind of my statement of where I'm at on this space. And I think in all the we all take advantage of the economic tools. It's just, we choose what we want to take advantage of in the sense of representing the city on an economic development level. So, are there any other thoughts, questions? Okay, you'll be back and you'll tell us about the lease. We'll be back a month. So it might be March or April. Thank you. Are there any public comments? I don't have any. Any citizens, public, what am I, I'm lost on. Okay, now I'm adjourning. Goodbye.
Some time, I'd actually encourage you all to, if you haven't been to the rental car center for a while, to actually go across the way and enjoy it, especially if you haven't seen the recently renovated Paul Coe's mural, the Phoenix. It's absolutely stunning in our rental car center, and I really encourage you to go over there and take a look at it before you come back. You're going to see two beautiful stations, and I think with that, what we're going to do is we're going to move our media